Oh, greetings, folks. Okay, give it a couple more minutes for people to flow in. I got to be careful playing music at the beginning of my videos while waiting for people to come in anymore. They want to tell me I'm trying to do that shit and use it for commerce and ban my video.
Really?
Yeah, part 22, I played that happy song at the beginning while we were waiting, thinking, well, it can't hurt anything.
Yeah.
They won't allow my video to be viewed by anybody but me because it's got that song on there saying there's some kind of copyright infringement. Excuse me, I got it from public domain. I'm using it in an educational format and no compensation is being made from it. I don't see what the infringement is. Have you made a false claim? See, they use their AI to do this, and we have to respond specifically through the AI system in order to get a response on the other end. Otherwise, the AI system just throws it out. That's what I was telling you about with the fact checkers. Them fact checkers are just using AI programs to say, oh, well, it was posted here before that it's false, so it must be false, without doing their own research. It's just stupid.
Did I tell you that
AI is just doing their job.
Did I tell you I got all crazy on the fact checker? I was fact checking the fact checkers, and they offered to give me a job. They invited me to come be a part of their team. And I thought about it, but I hadn't quite figured out how to contract with them yet. But
well, tell you what,
fact checker,
I'll contract with you if you get rid of all the other fact checkers.
Yeah,
because they ain't fact checking. They're running a program. They are not doing their job. You're getting screwed. Just like I said in my video, if Zuckerberg is honestly paying these people to do their fact checking, Zuckerberg and Facebook is getting screwed, or they're complicit in the stupidity and idiocy because even they can't comprehend that if your fact checkers are putting it on there that it's false, and a little old me spends 5 minutes and comes up with 10 sources and then puts the claim out there that you're either stupid or complicit, and you still haven't come back and defeated that and removed the post, then obviously what I've stated is in fact true.
Well, they're getting paid by those companies to take down, it's propaganda. We know how it works. We know it's the usual suspects, but they don't give me such a hard time anymore because I got really pissed. I was like, I'm sick of these fact checkers. They're liars. Proof of claim, right? Onus probandi. If you're going to claim that it's a lie, well, then prove it.
Exactly. So anyway, tonight I wanted to continue on with what we're trying to actualize here, and that's what we were kind of getting into with the other Zoom there, Lori, is the Trading with the Enemies Act is because they're on occupied land. They're occupying land of people that were already here. Okay. So when we talk about the property deeds and the Trading with the Enemies Act and full acquittance and discharge with that receipt, like I've been saying, it doesn't get properly entered into the records anywhere without the proper capital transfer tax being paid. And it tells us that the capital, that taxes are duly paid by stamp. Everybody is under the assumption that we pay the taxes with Federal Reserve notes. And even the IRS guy down at the local county said, well, you got to give us so much in federal. Even he doesn't know this. Yet it states in, on, and for their records, in their code, taxes are duly paid by stamp. Plain English. And so, unless the legal document that is used as the payment, knowing that we don't have any monetary instruments to pay, but today we pay through negotiable instruments and then tender them back. It's what we were touching on earlier, receivership and delivery and everything. Yeah, see, that's what it's all about, is delivery and entry of the proper forms. So if they don't get entered properly, it can't get delivered from that point on. They still fail in their jurisdiction, even in that Trading with Enemies Act. These people that want to do these, and the people that are accepting it on the other end without that revenue stamp, are still allowing the fraud to continue. If you want to go by their words, it should take one document with one stamp, fixing the entire record, which is removal from everything from that probate system that Boris was talking about. Removal from the probate system so you can establish your private estate.
I think it's interesting too, when I was looking about US codes about customers, and when you think about custom and the whole, like the whole
error. It's custom error.
Yeah.
It's the error in the customs. They've been converted. People, the pronunciation of the sounds that we make have been morphed to fit the literal language that we write. It's just like behave. When they took the conjunction out of behave and put it somehow became behave. It's not behave, it's behave, or it's not behave, it's behave. Everybody says it's behave. It's not behave, it's behave. It's to behave and to hold. You have and hold. That's the wedlock. Have and hold. So when we talk about the property deeds, we're talking about to have the land and to hold it in your possession. Holding is your standing. That's nothing more. It doesn't mean physical paperwork in your possession. It's where you stand. That's what you hold in all the land in your sight. Why? Because the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And I am in the lowest valley. When you are in the lowest valley, I am there with you. When you're on the highest mountaintop, I am there with you. He is with me and he is with you. So if I am at the highest of the valley, of the top mountaintop, and you are at the lowest of the valley, and I can see you, he is in both places. He is everything. It is what we are. It's our natural existence. There is no property deed that's valid that transfers a capital asset unless we say so. Nobody's willing to do that. Go ahead.
See, that's the part where I get a little, I completely spiritually agree with you 100%, honestly, on more than I do most people. Like, I really resonate with your spiritual perspective. Then there's this other part of me looking at the tangible real world and how we're supposed to be both lawful and legal. And the whole idea is a holding company, right? Which is kind of what a trust is. And it holds the property.
That's exactly what a trust is.
Yeah, it holds the res. And so,
they get the pecuniary damage or pecuniary compensation for the usufruct because they get to use that trust. What it is in a trust, the trustee is allowed to use estate assets for investments for the benefit of the beneficiary. Now, so long as he's doing that, he can also include himself and his interest in doing that, his physical performance of doing that. He has an interest in that. So he can also place his interest in that investment and pull some interest out of it. That's the usufruct that we were just talking about in Boris's group. Okay, when he said get rid of that third party, that's what we're doing. We're letting them have the usufruct of the obligations within their system to make sure the record remains at zero balance according to the 3-day schedule. If there's an out of balance account, they now have a duty to research and resolve it because it's on their side, not ours.
Yeah, see, and that's the interesting part about them commingling funds, because in
Yep.
equity, if they're because it's one thing, trustees deserve to be paid. That's what that interest is, right? Like giving it back to them, like, hey, I don't even want that interest,
Yep.
but
And see,
they
that's
deserve
why
to
I
be.
say if you're going to draw up a $5 million bond, give them $2.5 million, keep the other yourself. That way they have an actual set of funds that they can put in as investments, and they can have fun with it all they want. Here, go to the big boy house, go to that big casino over there and play at that one. I'm
Yeah,
done. I'm not gambling anymore. I'm not supposed to gamble his assets.
but so the problem what happens is when they're not fulfilling their duties, like, because they actually have duties, that customs and duties to perform in that fiduciary role, and their whole abrogation to begin with, once it gets pointed out, every single thing that they've touched and commingled will go back to the actual beneficiary, who's in trust law, right, is actually considered the true owner.
Yeah, well, we were talking about custom error. It makes them the custom heir because now, like I said earlier, and I'm going to show you this here in regards to property deeds. Oops, let me pull it up. See, when we do the reversion, like Boris was talking about earlier, we become the seller. Property deeds, like I was saying, property deeds are legal documents used in real estate that transfers ownership of real property from a grantor, seller, to a grantee, buyer. So when I said seller in there and he wanted to sit there and interrupt me, he didn't let me finish the point because as a seller, you are the grantor. Once you sell it, you no longer have interest in it. According to trust law, it's the grantee that has interest. By operation of law, sell it back to them. What are we selling? We're selling their paper instrument back to them here. You want it? We want 250 or 20, 2.5 million in credit deposited into this zero interest drawdown account. Now you got 2.5 million that you can draw down, and every quarter it zeroes back out, going back up to the full 2.5 million, because everything's a donation, 100% return every quarter or every year. That's your zero balance account. And instead of zero balancing this way, it zero balance the opposite way now, the correct way. It attaches those credits back to the account because they were donated. It was a TIV, and now they give it back. Equal consideration works in operation by law.
So I have a question about this because, we know real estate is it's commercial and commercial, but if we're not engaged, like I've never been a fish farmer, so how does that work? Because really that changes everything, because it's like, well, wait a second,
Well, I'll
this is
explain it to
based
you.
on a presumption.
They have to condemn the land in order to have a fish farm. And what that means is the land cannot be used for agricultural purposes. It has to be submerged. Literally, I'll have to see if I can find it again, but the only land they can claim is land that's been submerged naturally, and that is a natural condemnation process of agriculture. You can't grow agriculture on land if it's submerged. So it's condemned land already by nature. It's the
Oh,
land
that's
under the
why they're
water.
putting That's why they're making everything, marking everything off as marshland.
Yes.
Out here in
Yes.
on Washington. That's
Yep.
they're saying, oh, we have to protect this land because it's
It's a
marshland
commercial
and just
condemnation
go
of
for it.
agriculture. Can't grow on this land. We claim it.
Wow.
Funny how that works, isn't it? We're going to talk a little bit about some bounty land warrants here today too, because that's going back to that Civil War, when soldiers came home and in exchange for their service, their compensation, they were paid per diem while they were in the Army in service, and now that they're out of service, their bonus is that discharge order or whatever, which was a bounty land warrant, and they could go claim generally 40 acres of land. But the next thing we're going to talk about is accessing land entry records. And I posted the link in the comments section. This is from the archives.gov, and it talks about the different types of land entry files and everything. Surrendered military bounty land warrants. Remember, we were just talking with Boris about surrendering. That's what we're doing. We're taking the certificate of live birth and we're surrendering it back in exchange for land. We're going to use it as a land warrant. The same concept. Listen, we supposedly held our service out to the United States in a military fashion without knowing it. Now that we know what's happened, as part of our compensation for not being compensated in that capacity our entire life, as part of the correction of the record, we now maintain our interest reversionary in the land. And it's this many acres. And this is the parcel I want. And this is part of the negotiations. See, contracts and bankruptcies and developing nations they don't happen overnight. It's a period of time of working together. That's what a truce is. That's what the peace treaties are. It's not a finalization. It's a start of, okay, let's end the war and start working together, doing good works. Yeah. And that's all it is. Simple expressions of what really is true in your heart. And if that's what's true in your heart, I beg you to follow me, because that's what's true in my heart. Prior to 1862, Congress passed a series of acts that either incentivized individuals to enlist in federal military units or compensated them for past services. Under these acts, veterans could apply for and receive a warrant granting them a certain amount of public land, typically in 40-acre increments, in exchange for their service. This is what we're going to do with the certificate of live birth in that sense. We're going to receive a certificate, and we're going to write the venture capital in there as grantor, granting it back to them in exchange for public lands for us to benefit from, while they hold the accession title. What's the accession title? The peace treaty. Veterans whose applications were approved could surrender their warrant. Remember, we're talking about warrant officers and all that. The information must be warranted. So veterans whose applications were approved could surrender their warrant to the local land office to claim the land. This is where they get the warranty deed. Unless the warranty deed is entered by a military retiree and has the capital transfer proof, the capital transfer tax has been paid and proven with that stamp, that revenue stamp, revenue stamp, taxes are duly paid by stamp. So he had to have paid the transfer tax still. That stamp has to be on there. If he did not pay the transfer tax, then it wasn't a valid transfer. period. I don't care how you look at it. This goes for every legal document there is that is transferring any kind of interest, rights, titles of any property in any sense. All real and personal effects. They have
Who does it get paid to? The Department of Defense?
U.S.
Who does it
Department of
get paid
State.
to?
U.S. Department of State.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, what happens is now you created your own little 40-acre state, and they have to send a government official out to do a survey. Why are they doing a survey on your property? They're not. They're doing a survey on all of the other properties to make sure there's no further infringement on what is not in their jurisdiction. The following information is needed to request a surrendered military bounty land warrant file on site at Archives 1. Act under which the land was granted. Acreage granted and the warrant number. That's the warranty deed number I keep telling everybody about. Get that warranty deed, get that number, find out what the property is. It's surveyed and described in there, and find out who operated it under any act. Because no matter what act it was operated under, if it doesn't follow the tax act showing that the capital transfer of assets was done, then it didn't happen. Didn't happen. Pre-1908 land entry files, this would be like people that were still in the war or ready to enlist in the war or retired from the war, specifically the Civil War. So the Civil War ended in what, 1865? So then we have, after that was land entry files. So 1865, gosh, if the guy was 20 when he went into the Army, 25 when he came out, and he lived until he was 85, that's 60 years. Could possibly be some in there. But anybody that wasn't in the military, but had enlisted, or not in the war, but had enlisted in the military after the war, still had availability of those land warrants. So when they retired for their service, they could still put land entries into the file. So it would have been after the Civil War. And then 1908 and later land entry files, beginning in July 1908, the GLO revised its system of issuing patents. And this is what happened. Assigning each consecutive patent issued a unique number instead of assigning numbers by state and land office. This is why we have this chain of title. If that warranty deed has a number on it and it reverts to a previous warranty deed, it should have a consecutive number. If there's a break in that chain somewhere, something happened and somebody's trying to fix a record, and if it doesn't relate to an actual warrant, land warrant that has a tax revenue stamp on it, then the whole chain of title never had an initiation. It never got initiated. Therefore, it wasn't valid from the beginning, ab initio, de novo. To request a serial land patent, and I posted this link in the comment section as well, so we can start looking some of this information up and get familiar with it. But it's a good thing to, genealogists, military historians, record managers, veterans, these are all different people that we can contact to further our own education. And that's all we're doing. And it tells you, these are all educational capacities, every last one of them. The next one I want to discuss is the National Archives order for copies of land entry files. When we get familiar with this and we want to get that chain of title, we want to go, we're going to quit messing around with the current warranty deeds. And that's so we can correct the record ab initio. Once we get this down pat, we can teach our younger generation how to start the record correctly, so there is no need for warranty deeds. It should never enter that record. The land shall not be sold forever. It shall be granted. So once it is granted and it is in a land record file as a grant, anything that says that it's been sold after there is fraud. It's a violation of the trust that was initiated and proven on the land grant record, showing it came from a private trust. This one too is in the comment section. This one here is the next thing I want to put in the comment section for everybody to put in their archives so we can do research as we go. Decisions of the Department of the Interior and the General Land Office. Remember, we keep talking about the General Ledger and the Postmaster General and the Comptroller General and the Director General and the Attorney General. It's all general information in the public record. And when there's something wrong in the public record, we have a right to correct it and an interest in correcting it. Because again, remember, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine. It's called redemption of the land. That is our interest in correcting the public record at all times for every square inch. Cases relating to the public lands. 1909. General Land Office decisions, and it's got a list of them. Then it's got a table of cases cited. And it's got a list of them. And then it's got a table of overruled and modified cases. And it's got a list of them. Table of circulars and instructions. Remember, Lori, Boris was talking about letter of instruction. Guess what? You could take IRS circular and return it to them with instructions. Every piece of paper is called money, people. It's a negotiable instrument. It's an offer. If it's in the public venue, it's an offer. An offer for what? An offer to see if you think it's true and correct. If you don't think it's true and correct, it's an offer for you to correct it, thereby placing your interest in it. And that's all we're doing. That's all we're doing. Circulars and instructions cited, construed, and modified. Acts of Congress cited and construed. I recommend everybody put this in their repertoire for your own use. It's 840 pages. So it's not something we're going to read overnight, but more specifically for future use, retaining knowledge, retaining how this stuff used to work, and going back to that original sense of realizing that nothing is granted without the true grantor. And he says it's not supposed to be sold because he's the one that granted it. He didn't sell it to you. He granted it to you. So you could give it freely to the next guy, not to sell him and take advantage of him. That dismisses his grant. So again, I say if it's been put on the public record as a grant in usufruct, they can't remove that usufruct and make it a private title or a public title for sales in tax purposes. They can't do that. They have to do that under a private investment and return it and then pull their profit out of it as an investor. They can't do the sidebar shit. No more. And then I've got the same document, but I went down to page 531 because it says a private land claim, survey jurisdiction of land department. And this is what I was talking about. When we get a parcel of land and they come out and survey it, we need to enforce that. We don't need to say, well, no, I'm going by this, or this. We need to let them survey it in their system so that they can let their system know that anything that's within this survey is out of your bounds. Otherwise, it will get confused. We have to fix that part of the record. We have to let them remove this parcel of land from their record by excluding it by these bounds. And with that, I yield.
Okay, what you're saying there makes so much sense because they're sidetracking and taxing us when it's off limits to them. Okay, and they didn't either need to do the investment and pull out their part, or leave this private and allow us to keep it and grant it on to the next generation.
Remember, anytime they want to try to use, well, we've got easement rights. Well, that proves that your easement is a commercial privilege, and it's a easement because the landowner allowed it. Now, let's make sure it's clear that the landowner that owned this land prior to me is the one that allowed it, and that is not included in any warrant that I put forth. In fact, that the warrant that we're putting forth is to remove those easements in truce. If you want to come to this property, you don't use force majeure, you come in truce. In other words, under the agreement that we state peacefully. That means you keep your armed officers off of this property. It is not for a war at any time. And that's the importance of Article 56 of the law of land and warfare. You got to put that black and white sign up. This is not a commercial venue. This is a peaceful venue. We respect art, history, religion, sanctification, ordination of humankind and knowledge. We're here for the common good. We have no weapons. We are no threat. We come in peace. We are in peace, and we're going to go back in peace. See, we're not of this world. We're in this world, and we're in this world in peace, and we're going to go in peace, whether it be by your war or by my assertion of the word. Either or. My body here in this world is a sacrifice, but I myself, as I am, that's the spiritual part. You'll never be able to get a hold of that. Never.
So this is what
May I ask a question?
Law of land law of land warfare.
Okay, thank you.
Land warfare.
So this is what I'm looking at right now. If you go to the Department of State and look under international family law, it all applies.
Yes.
So when we're talking about them being under the laws of succession, they are acting as an assessor to your estate. They're supposed to help you protect your estate.
Yes, and they're doing it in usufruct instead, emoluments.
So when I was talking about the hereditaments as it relates to the Department of State, they tell you about all of this family law. They tell you about family law, a foreign institution, and all of this as it relates to jurisdiction. So I was going over a live today and showing people under family law, because that's where it derived from international family law.
Yep, and that's directly from, I can't remember the verse, but it's House of Jacob in the surname of Israel.
So everything you're saying is on point. I was just like, wow. I remember seeing. I know from studying that. I said, dang, that makes perfect sense, because it aligned with everything you're talking.
Because if we remember correctly, the tribe split up, and there were 10 tribes that supposedly got lost, called the Lost Tribes of Israel, and that was the House of Jacob. I can't remember what all tribes they were, but they settled in Israel, and they took upon the surname Israel and named the city Israel. Okay. The other two tribes, Jake,
Judah,
Judah and Benjamin.
Yehuda.
Judah and Benjamin. So you're either of the house of Judah or the tribe of Israel, house or tribe of Benjamin, or the house or house of Jacob in the surname Israel. I was lost and now I'm found. I've been redeemed. He called me by name, the surname Israel. And that's all they need to know.
Hey, Keith, can I ask you a question, bud?
Sure.
All right. You know, you touched on something. Of course, they're always touching on something really good. But, you know, when they're sending us something and you refer to it as an offer, like Social Security is sending something, you know, like the bank does every 6 months saying that they're changing their rules, whatever. Okay, that's an opportunity for us to update the contract in the way we want. And that gives us a rights, title, interest, and asset in that paperwork from that point on that we didn't have maybe before. So we get to claim that, right?
Yes. And what you're going to do is, like I said, you're going to surrender it. You're going to show that you have rights, titles, and interests in this, but you're going to surrender it back to their custody under usufruct and subrogation because it should never have been issued. So now that it has, and they have an interest in it as well, you're going to give them their interest, but their obligation now is to return your interest.
Is this equal compensation then? You know, because
equal consideration, equal benefit.
Yeah. So this equal consideration right here, that's ultimate, really, isn't it? That what both sides are getting the plus. So if there's an asset there for each side, then they cash in their side, they're happy, and we get to cash in our side and we're happy.
Correct. And now it's settled.
Yeah. And so we can do that on anything they send us in the public.
Anything. You can take the Constitution of the United States and do the same thing.
Okay, so that once again gets us back to we're unlimited.
You take any piece of paper, blank,
yeah,
and just write it down. As long as it's true and faithful and accurate. Oh yeah.
Okay. Another thing you was talking about is the tax. You know, all right. I've been hearing this for 10 years that there's a secret tax on all land and a lot of things that we purchase, cars, all of it, that there's that secret stamp tax that we need to pay, you know, but nobody knows where to go and pay it at. Okay. Cause I know friends that have asked different people and nobody was able to run it down by going through the county or, you know, somebody.
Well, I'll show you. I'll show you where it's at. Real quick here. We got less than a minute to go, I think, or a minute and 20 seconds to go. 26 U.S. Code 6201 Assessment Authority. And in that, it says the secretary is authorized to and required to make the inquiries, determinations, and assessment of all taxes, including interest, additional amounts, additions to tax, and assessable penalties imposed by this title or accruing under any formal internal revenue law, which have not been duly paid by stamp. There is no other way to pay taxes except by stamp, and that is by placing the revenue stamp on the document that transferred the rights, titles, and interests. That's why it's called a revenue. It took it from this jurisdiction to this jurisdiction, from this venue to this venue. Revenue, showing the capital has been transferred.
Boy, you're 100% right, because when I use a Federal Reserve note, what they're charging me is a usury fee and calling it a tax. Yep. Okay, that's a scam. But when you pay it with a stamp, you actually discharge the debt, and that's what we got to do, because that's the money.
All right, got to go. Love you, and we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Thanks for joining in. Remember,